The unforgiving summer sun beat down on the small Jersey Shore hotel, making the air thick and suffocating. At 16, she had taken this under-the-table cleaning job, but today was worse than usual. A drunken guest had vomited all over the lounge chairs near the pool, the stench unbearable in the 108-degree heat. Sweat clung to her skin as she scrubbed, gagging with every breath. She checked her watch, almost quitting time. $40 closer to freedom. Screw this, she thought. After this nightmare, I'm hitting the Boardwalk Mall. She had no idea something far worse was already waiting. The boardwalk buzzed with life. Laughter, carnival music, the crash of waves beyond the wooden planks. Neon signs flickered over packed food stands, the scent of fried dough and salt water thick in the humid air. She weaved through the crowd, her all-black punk outfit absorbing the day's lingering heat. Thirst clawed at her throat. Stopping at a drink stand, she ordered a lemonade, the cold cup sweating in her grip. Then, her name. Shouted. Urgent. She turned to see Christian and Vaughn pushing through the crowd, wild-eyed. "Keep walking," Vaughn muttered. "Don't look back." Her stomach twisted. Something was wrong. Christian and Vaughn moved fast, their faces tense, eyes darting behind her. She fought the urge to turn around. Don't look back. Vaughn slid off his mirrored sunglasses, glancing at the reflection. "Well, thank God I didn't scratch them," he muttered, but his sharp glance at Christian said something else. "Move." Her pulse quickened as they picked up the pace, pushing through the crowd. The boardwalk, once lively and carefree, now felt suffocating. Every passing face a potential threat. A cold sweat prickled her skin. Someone had been following her. And they were close. Too close. The Boardwalk Mall swallowed them in dim, artificial light. Inside a cramped music merch shop, walls dripped with band posters, the air thick with incense and dust. Shelves overflowed with records and vintage shirts, the faint hum of an old rock song playing overhead. Vaughn's brother, the store manager, greeted them with a knowing nod. "Got any Frank Zappa stuff?" Vaughn asked casually. His brother disappeared into the back. Relief almost settled, until a new smell crept in. Acrid, foul, like burning rubber mixed with sweat. She turned slowly. And there he was. A red ski jacket, hollow eyes, shaking hands. He stood motionless in the dim light, his red ski jacket out of place in the stifling summer heat. His face was gaunt, hollow eyes locked onto them with an unsettling intensity. His hands trembled inside his pockets, his breath ragged. Then he spoke, his voice low, fevered. "You three, I've seen you, followed you, gonna cut it out of you before you get to me." Her stomach dropped. He wasn't big, wasn't towering, but something about him. His stillness, his words, made the air feel tight. Christian raised his hands, calm but firm. "Whoa, bud, we're just minding our own business." The man's breath hitched, his fingers twitched. Then, slowly, he pulled his hands from his pockets. In his left, a rusted, chipped straight razor glinted under the dim store lights. Her blood turned ice. His grip tightened, knuckles white, lips curling into a twisted sneer. "I'm gonna cut the sin out of you demons, and have my way with your corpses." His voice dripped with rage, teeth clenched, eyes wild. Then he moved, lunging forward, the blade raised high. Panic exploded in her chest. They had seconds, maybe less. Christian tensed, Vaughn shifted to run. Then, from the side, something crashed into him. Hard. The impact was sudden, a blur of motion as a figure tackled the man to the ground. The razor clattered across the floor, spinning, scraping against tile. He thrashed wildly, screaming incoherent threats, his red ski jacket now smeared with dust and sweat. Vaughn's brother, breathing hard, pinned him down just as the front door burst open. A police officer strode in, zip ties already in hand. "Damn," the officer muttered, tightening the restraints. "When did you get out? Third strike now?" The man seethed, eyes rolling. "You're not even supposed to be near the kids, the beach, or the boardwalk." The officer kept a firm grip on the man's restraints as he writhed, muttering under his breath. Outside, flashing red and blue lights cast eerie reflections on the boardwalk's wooden planks. Onlookers whispered, their faces a mix of shock and curiosity. Christian, Vaughn, and she stood frozen, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. "Statements," the officer said, pulling out a notepad. Vaughn exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. "He was following her," he said. "We saw him come out from behind a dumpster near her hotel." Her stomach dropped. He had been watching her long before she even noticed. The boardwalk felt different now. Hollow, eerie, like a place she no longer belonged. Neon lights buzzed overhead, casting strange shadows on the worn wooden planks. Vaughn's words echoed in her head. "He was behind the hotel. He was following you for hours." Her skin prickled. If they hadn't found her, if she had taken her usual walk home beneath the boardwalk, she might have never made it back. The thought made her stomach twist. She glanced at her friends, their faces still pale. "Thank God for loyal friends," she whispered. The night air felt colder now. She would never forget this. The Pacific roared beneath the steel giant, waves crashing like thunder against its pillars. A lone figure stood at the edge of the towering bridge, motionless in the storm. The wind howled, rain lashing against the cold iron, but the figure remained still, staring down into the abyss. Lightning flashed, revealing a pale, ghostly face, empty eyes reflecting the churning sea below. Legends spoke of lost souls lingering here, trapped between this world and the next. If you saw them, it meant only one thing. They had already jumped, and sometimes the ocean kept their voices long after they were gone. The town whispered with stories of the dead. On fog-drenched nights, ghostly figures loomed on the bridge, staring into the void. The boardwalk held echoes of lost footsteps, the scent of salt and decay lingering in the damp air. Locals spoke of a hitchhiker, a man who waited by the roadside, face obscured by shadows. Those who stopped never saw him again. The ocean, restless and hungry, had claimed many. Some believed the lost still wandered, searching for a way home. But the truth was far worse. Not every spirit wanted to leave. Some remained, waiting for their next victim. The Coast Guard station was quiet. The hum of machinery and the distant roar of the storm, the only sounds. Inside the dimly lit communications center, a radio crackled with static, filling the room with an eerie presence. Rain pounded against the reinforced windows as an officer leaned over the controls, his fingers tense on the mic. Then, a voice, weak, distant, barely a whisper. "Help, Mayday. I don't know where I am." The words sent a chill down his spine. It sounded impossibly far away, as if calling from the bottom of the ocean itself. But that was impossible, wasn't it? The ocean churned violently, its surface torn apart by wind and rain. Waves crashed over the wreckage, splintered wood, tangled rigging, an overturned life ring drifting aimlessly in the void. The searchlight from the Coast Guard boat cut through the storm, scanning for any sign of life. But there was nothing. No movement, no survivors. Just the cold, merciless sea swallowing the remains of a life lost. The crew exchanged silent glances, knowing the brutal truth. No one could survive these waters. As the storm grew stronger, they turned back, leaving behind only debris and the unanswered question of what truly happened. The radio crackled, filling the dimly lit room with static. Then, through the interference, a voice, weak, distant, almost drowned by the storm. "Help, Mayday. I don't know where I am." It was barely more than a whisper, hollow and unnatural, like a dying echo from beneath the waves. The officer's breath caught in his throat as he gripped the mic. "What's your position? Repeat. What is your position?" Silence. The static hummed, stretching unbearably long. The voice never came again, but something about it lingered. Something cold, something wrong. It sounded like a man already lost, speaking from the depths below. The glow of the navigation screen cast eerie shadows in the darkened room. The officer's hands trembled as he traced the red marker pulsing on the map. It was impossible. This was the exact last known position of the doomed sailboat before it vanished beneath the waves. His breath hitched. The distress call. It had come from here. But there was nothing left. No boat. No survivor. Just deep, endless water. A chill crept up his spine. The man was gone, had been gone for hours. Yet somehow, Impossibly, his voice had reached them. A final desperate cry. From the grave, the sun rose over an empty sea, its light casting an eerie glow on the still water. The storm had passed, leaving behind an unnatural silence. Helicopters hovered above, searchlights sweeping the endless waves. Coast Guard boats drifted slowly, their crews scanning the horizon with haunted eyes. But there was nothing. No wreckage, no body, not even a trace of the lost sailor. It was as if the ocean had swallowed him whole, erasing all evidence he ever existed. Yet the radio transmission still echoed in their minds. "Help, Mayday. I don't know where I am." Maybe he still didn't. The bridge loomed in the early morning mist, its steel frame slick with rain. The storm had passed, but the air remained heavy, charged with something unseen. Waves crashed below, their rhythmic roar the only sound. Then, movement. A shadow stood at the edge, barely visible through the fog. The same figure, the same lifeless stare. The officer froze, heart pounding. He had seen this before. Lightning flashed, and in that brief instant, the figure's face became clear, waterlogged, pale, eyes wide with eternal fear. Then darkness. The bridge was empty, but deep below, the ocean still whispered its ghostly call. It started as an ordinary evening at Sunset Beach. Cold wind, crashing waves, and the endless stretch of darkening sky. We wandered the rocky shore, snapping photos, laughing, unaware that something was watching. Then, one of us pointed upward. A light. Small at first, like a distant star, but wrong, too bright, too still. It hovered, pulsing like a heartbeat in the sky. Then, in an instant, it disappeared, reappeared miles away. Again, and again. It wasn't a plane, it wasn't anything we could explain. We tried capturing it, but our cameras saw nothing. Whatever it was, it didn't want to be seen. We stood frozen, staring at the impossible. The light wasn't just moving, it was teleporting. 1 second it was directly above us, glowing like a silent beacon. The next it blinked out, only to reappear miles away in the blink of an eye. No aircraft moved like that, no drone, no natural phenomenon. It seemed to be watching, playing with us. We whispered, speculated, but none of us dared say what we were thinking. We tried filming it, but our screens showed nothing, just empty sky. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the light was gone, as if it had never been there. Years passed and life led me back to Sunset Beach, not as a visitor, but as a drifter. Homeless, I moved from campground to campground, my only shelter a flimsy tent. The beach I once knew felt different now, colder, heavier, as if something unseen had settled there. The nights were long and eerily silent, the ocean's rhythmic crash the only sound. But the quiet wasn't comforting. It felt expectant, as if something lurked beyond the tree line, watching, waiting. I told myself it was just my imagination, but deep down I knew. Sunset Beach hadn't forgotten me, and neither had they. The silence shattered in an instant. A deafening roar, like a jet engine at full throttle, erupted above my tent, so loud it shook the ground. My breath caught. It wasn't moving, just a relentless hovering noise, as if something massive loomed just overhead, unseen. My mind raced. Was it a plane, a storm? No, nothing natural sounded like this. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. No fade out, no retreat, just an abrupt, unnatural silence. I sat frozen, my ears ringing. When I finally dared to step outside, the sky was empty. No lights, no movement, nothing at all. I stepped out of the tent, heart pounding, the deafening roar still echoing in my skull. But outside, nothing. No planes, no lights, just an empty, starless sky. The campground was eerily still, as if the world itself had paused. Yet for those few unbearable moments, the sound had been real, too real. It wasn't wind, wasn't distant thunder. It was something massive, hovering right above me, unseen. The weight of the silence pressed against my chest. I wanted to believe it was over, just my mind playing tricks. But deep down I knew. I wasn't alone out here, not anymore. The next day, just as I was packing to leave, it happened again. The same thunderous, suffocating roar, rattling my bones, vibrating the very air around me. But this time I was ready. I bolted from the tent, eyes scanning the sky. Nothing, no planes, no movement, just that relentless, all-consuming sound. My breath came in ragged gasps. How could something so deafening have no source? It wasn't just noise, it was presence, a weight pressing down, unseen but undeniable. Then just like before, it stopped. The silence was worse, it felt expectant, as if something was waiting for me to notice. I wasn't the only one. Later that day, I told my mom, expecting laughter, disbelief, but then her expression changed. Others heard it too, she said. Residents at the RV park, older, rational people, not the type for wild stories. They'd all described the same thing. A deafening roar, a sound with no source. No one could explain it. No one wanted to. I searched online, found reports. People all over the world had heard it. Theories ranged from secret aircraft to something not of this world, but deep down I already knew. Whatever it was, it had been watching, listening. I left Sunset Beach, but it never left me. Even now I think about the sound, the light, the eerie stillness that followed. Some say it was military testing, a natural phenomenon, something logical. But I know better. That place holds secrets, things we aren't meant to understand. If you ever find yourself there, standing in the cold mist, staring at the endless waves, listen, watch the sky. You might see the light, hear the sound, and if you do, know this, it sees you too. And once it does, it never forgets. Some things are not meant to be found.